Hi guys, and welcome to the next video for the January 22 exam paper series. In this video we're going to be looking at paper B, and we're going to be looking at activity 6, which covers the forms. So as you can see from the screen at the moment, we've got our activity for activity 6 in the paper B, and we're asked to create two forms. The first form will always be the more simpler of the two forms that you've got to create. In this instance, we're being asked to create an input form to add a subject. We do have a number of criteria that we've got to go to, and these will be that the form should be ready for data entry state. So we're not displaying any data that's already there. We're just allowing a user to input some new data. The subject title must be present, so we can hopefully have a nice little label at the top of our form. The level must be within the specified range, and that will be in the information at the front of the paper. And then we're going to be moving on to the user should be able to select the faculty for a subject. So here we're going to be using something like a combo box in our form. We're going to create a valid data should be appended to the subject table, and a save message should be displayed. So we're going to hopefully put on there a little bit of VBA, and that will allow us to display a message back to our user audience to know that that has actually worked, or if there are any issues, to show a message back to the user with a suitable message to say what the problem was. And that covers the last bullet point there. A suitable error message should appear when invalid data has been used. So we're going to move on into the creation of our database. Well, we don't need to create it because it's been created for us. As you know, in paper B, we're provided with a database. So what you're going to need to do is go to your areas and navigate your way to where that database is stored. So as you can see here, we're going to go into our Access database, and we're going to find where the files are stored. Dependent on where your exams office will ask you to log into, or your teachers have provided you with the, find that you will be given the two database files that you need to. So if you go through your File Explorer element of Access and just navigate your way to those areas that you've been informed of by your teachers, and you'll find that there are these two files, these Access database files, as I'm just about to show you now. What you may notice is these two files look slightly different. They are just for different versions of Access. They are going to be the same data sets inside each, so whichever one you use will be fine. Now you may notice here we've got 4 tables that have already been provided for us. We don't need to play around with those. It does say that in the exam paper. So let's move on. Let's make this form. So if you click on the Create tab and go to the Form Wizard in the option on our ribbon, we'll see that we're going to select the table subject. We're going to choose the double arrows here just to pull over all of the field areas that we're interested in. And we can see that there are a few elements we can customize. We're just going to leave them as default. And we're going to go inside of the title element on the next side of this wizard. And we're just going to give it a name of FRM_subject. And we're going to modify the design. Once we go into the Modify Design element, you'll see that we have our design view. We can click on the View option in our ribbon just to see what it looks like, and you see that we've got our information, the heading, and we can cycle through the form and see the records that are inside the database. Now, we want to go and change this, obviously. We want to add a few more pieces to this. So we want to make it so that the form is ready for user input. So what we're going to do is just do a few bits of customization first of all. We're going to go and add in the information where it allows us to show the faculty in which the user subject is going to be in. So we're going to click on our control options in our ribbon for form design, and we're going to drag down or click on the combo box. The first option we're going to choose is to get the value from a table in the database. We're going to choose the table faculty, and we're going to pull over the faculty title using the single arrow in this instance. We're going to click on Next for the next option on the box, and you'll see we'll have a preview here of the actual records inside that table. Notice it does say hide the column key recommended. That's just because it's pulling over an additional piece of information, even though we didn't select it, which was the faculty ID. So in the next screen, you'll see that actually it's asking us where we want to store this ID into our database and into the table that we've got. So as I've just done, it's just gone back and I've shown you that it's pulled through that faculty ID there for you. And we're going to store the ID that's been pulled through into the ID area of faculty ID. This will make a bit more sense in a second when I show you the tables and how it actually pulls through the actual ID value and not actually the text itself. We're going to create a label for our combo box where it says CBO faculty. And we're going to just see here on the right hand side of our property sheet that actually we have a row source where it shows a select query pulling through the information for us. So as I mentioned earlier on, I'm going to show you how the faculty combo box pulls through the information into the subject table. So first of all, I'm just going to open up the two tables for faculty and subject. And you can see that there are the subjects we have here, and on the column for faculty ID we just have the number. That's the foreign key from the primary key from the faculty. As we can see here, we've got the primary key of 1 through to 4 for each of the faculties. If I go into the subject area, you'll see that when I expand it, because of the relationships that have been created in the database, you'll see that when I toggle the plus signs down, you'll see that the subjects are related to those individual faculties. So on the arts, we can see here that it have GCSE art and design. So when we created our form and we came to that section where it talked about the primary key being hidden and then what value we wanted to store the value into, what we were doing was we're storing the primary key as a foreign key inside of the subject title area. If we run it and view it, we can see that actually, yes, we now have the data and the information in there that we want, and we can cycle through that, and we can see that it changes accordingly to the faculty ID that I've also pulled through. So if we go on to add a new record, which is the starred option down the bottom, you'll see that it's blank. And if I was to enter in a new subject, say for example, BTEC level 2, and I'm just going to go into the subject level here, just going to change that to B2, and then I'm not going to touch the faculty ID, but I'm just going to change it from the combo box. What we're hoping is the faculty ID will change automatically. So if I choose, for example, the arts, we can see that the faculty ID has changed to 3. So we know that that combo box is functioning as we want it to be. So I'm just going to press escape to clear the records in that so that I can go back into design view, and we're going to move on to the next section of our tasks in the part A of our form creation, and we're going to add a button. So on our ribbon, we're going to click on the rectangle, and that allows us to use a button. This will open up like a wizard for you to use, and there are a number of operations that we can do. You've got miscellaneous, you've got record operations, and we're mainly interested in the save record operation here. As a rule of thumb, just use the text and change it or leave it as it is rather than leaving an icon. It's not intuitive to the user what that icon means. And we're just going to provide a name of CMD for command and then save. And then we close and finish that. And we can see that we can change how that looks in our property sheet. We can see that if we click on the event tab, we have an option for on click and an event procedure. If you select the 3 dots at the very end, we can go in and we can customize that VBA or Visual Basic for Applications script. Notice that we do have stuff provided to us already because it's automatically put in the save command for us. But we want to display a message to our users if there is a problem or whether the record has saved accurately or not. So what we're going to do is just going to go inside of the private sub for command save. So we're just going to go in the top part here and we're going to add some new Visual Basic for Application code. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in here an if statement. The if statement will provide us a number of opportunities to just check what's going on. So just going to do it underneath the private sub here, and we're going to put in our command of if is null, and then we're going to open our bracket, and we're going to look at the subject title object on our form, and if this is null, then we want something to happen. So we're going to press enter and we're going to go onto a new line and then we're going to put our condition in. So if there is no value inside of the subject title text box, we want to put a message box, which is done by MSG box, and we're going to put our speech mark and we're going to put in a prompt to the user. And here we're going to put in something like you must enter a subject title. And then we're going to close our speech marks. Notice the tooltip here shows us that we can have a few options. As long as we put our speech mark and then a comma, we can choose what type of alert box is provided. So here we're just going to put in VB OK only. Once we've done that, we're going to press enter, and then we're going to put in the word else. This is what's going to happen if that's okay. So if our subject title has something in it, then it's going to be okay, and it's going to move on to the next part of our else statement or our if statement. And I'm going to put in else if subject is less than 1 or subject level is greater than 3, then, and you can see I've got an error here. VBA is quite good because it shows us that we've got a problem by color coding it, and I can see that I've mistyped the word else if there. I've put the S before the L, so I'm just going to go back and change that so that it reads properly. And if we press enter or go to the very end and press enter, it should go to blue again. So we're good there. So if it's less than 1 or greater than 3, then we want to display another message. This is another error message. So we're going to put in MSG box, and we put in the speech mark. The subject level must be, and then we're going to put in 1, 2 or 3. We're going to close the speech mark, and then we're going to put a comma, and then we're going to choose what type of alert box we want. We're going to do again VB OK only, and then we'll press enter. And then we're going to put another else. So else here. So as long as the two subject area and the subject level entries are valid and they have information in them, we're going to come down to this last else statement where it's going to do something for us. It's going to actually do the save command. So here we're going to put in do cmd.save. And once we do that, we're going to provide a message back to the user by providing an MSG box. And then we're going to put something in there like, so MSG box, speech mark, the subject has been saved. And then we're going to close the speech mark, put a comma, and then again we're going to do VB OK only. Then we're going to press enter, and we're going to be putting a last do command option there for us, where it will allow us to move on to the next record. We're going to put a comma there, and we're going to put it as a new record. So AC new record. Basically, this is making sure that it's allowing for new entry of a new record once we've clicked on the save, and then it's going to go back to the blank form essentially. We're going to close our if statement by putting end if, and we're going to remove all of the on error, go to error underscore command, say underscore click, down to the bit where it says resume exit underscore cmd save underscore click. We're going to remove all of that and just leave the private sub element. So just select it all, and then we're going to delete. Once we've done that, we're just going to click on the X button, and that should take us back to our database, and we can check that our save option is working as we would expect. So next we're just going to jump into the view of the form to see what it looks like, and we can see that it's not in a data entry ready state. So what we need to do is go back into the design view of this form, and we're going to click on the corner where the two rulers meet, and you should see a black block in there. If it's not, if you click in that area, the black block will appear. And then we need to just choose to edit the data element of this property sheet. This deals with the form itself. If you look down the bottom, we'll see that there's a data entry area, and it's got no, and we're going to change that to yes. And then if we go back into the view of the form, you'll notice that the form is now in a data ready state, having only one record of 1 available, and not showing all of the records to us. But before we move on to and complete this form, we need to do a few pieces of housekeeping around the design. We're going to go in and change the form header to be something of meaning rather than leaving it as FRM_subject. So let's just put this as subject space form. And we're going to do the same for our labels. We want to make sure that our labels have something that is readable in English. So I'm just going to put some spaces between subject ID, subject's title, subject level. I'm going to leave the faculty ID in for now. And then we're just going to change the combo box faculty label to just be faculty. Once we've done that, we're just going to click on our save option in our ribbon, and then we should be able to close. And that should be enough for you to be able to get the full marks for the first form in the paper B paper. So we're now going to move on to the second of the two forms that we have to create in the paper B, and we're going to be looking at an input form that will allow us to add test results. So we're going to approach this form with a slightly different viewpoint than we normally have done in the previous examples. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you throughout the progress of creating this form the importance of making sure that we name our objects that we're dragging onto our form so that we can get everything to work. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to launch ourselves into Access and open up a new form by clicking on the Create toolbar at the very top. This time we are going to be choosing the option to create a blank form or a form design, and that takes us into the layout that we're used to in the design side of things. What we're going to do is click on the form header and footer just so that we've got an option and an area for us to add a nice little label to our form so that people, when they land on our form, they know what the form's all about. We're going to drag in the text option for us, or the label option, and we're going to add in add test results. Now, as we did in the previous form, we can click off and then click back on the object and then change its property sheet so that the text is of a larger size so that it stands out when someone loads up this form. So in the property sheet, we're just going to move over to the font size and we're going to select a appropriate size for this label, and I'm going to choose 36. As you can see, I've got to do a few adjustments here, so I'm just dragging the handles of the label up and down and to the left and right just to make it a bit bigger. And then we're going to centralize the text. So that looks okay for me. And now we're going to move on and we're going to jump into the creation of our first text box area. Select the text box from the controls, and then you can simply just click on the stage area and it will add the text box for you with a label. And we're going to change the label's value to be date with a colon at the end. And then we're going to choose to go inside of the data area of the tab for our text box, and we're going to click on and choose the control source. You can do this here, or you can type it actually inside of the text box on the actual design area. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to set the equals to dmax, so that's domain max, and then we're going to put in our parameters or our expression that we need to do. So we're going to use the curly bracket speech mark, and we're going to use test week. Then we're going to close that speech mark and put a comma, and then we're going to find the domain. Now the domain relates to the table which we're going to be gathering that information from. So we're going to use TBL test results. We're going to close that speech mark, close the bracket, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to go and check that this is actually working. So if we click on the view option, we can see that we have our lovely date of the maximum date available inside of that table. We're going to go back into the design view and we're going to move on and we're going to add the next few things that we have to add inside of this form. So now we're going to add a combo box to allow us to have the value of the department that this is going to fall into. So we click on the combo box and we drag it in, and it's going to allow us to go through the wizard, or we can choose to go off of the wizard. Now what I'm doing in this instance is I'm just going to not go through the wizard, and I'm going to put in my own row source by creating a query. Now we're going to use a few of the tables here in our query. So we need to go to the add tables. If it's not there, you can click on the button on add tables, but it should be there automatically for you. And we're going to choose 3 tables. We're going to choose the table for subject, the table for test, and the table for test results in this instance. We are interested in the values from subject, or the table subject of subject title. We're interested in the maximum mark from the table test. And finally, we're interested in the test week from the test results. Now I'm just going to drag this out a little bit and I'm going to hide it because we don't want to show the criteria from test week. But what I want to do is I want to add in some criteria here. Now I'm putting a square bracket and then I'm putting forms. This is identifying that we need to get the value from the forms. After we've closed the square bracket, we're going to put an exclamation mark, and then we're going to do another square bracket, and we're going to choose what form we want to get the information from. So we're just going to put form results, or FRM results. Closing that bracket, we're then going to put an exclamation mark, and then finally we're going to choose the object inside of the form results that we want to look at. And we're going to put that as a bracket, test, week, and then close the bracket. We're going to click on close, we're going to click yes on that, and then we're going to view it. And what should happen is nothing. And the reason it's not working is because we've not created the label that we're expecting to have inside of our form. Earlier on we created the label and the text box for the date, but we didn't actually give it an appropriate name. So as you can see here, I'm just clicking on the property sheet and applying a name of test week. So now when we run the actual report, when we run the form, because it notices the date there, it's going to provide me with all of the information relating to the subjects available on that date. So that's that text box done. We're now going to move on and we're going to add another one. And this time we're going to add a text box and we're going to make it slightly larger, and we're going to put in here a value as well. So like we did in the previous one with dmax equals dmax, and we're going to go inside of this text box and we're going to click on equal. And as I said earlier on, you can do this in the control source area of the property sheet, but I'm just showing you the different ways we can approach this. And I'm putting inside of my text box equals square bracket CBO subject, close the bracket, dot, open the bracket, column, close the bracket, and then we're going to choose column 1 in curly brackets. Now I'm going to give an appropriate label to this text area. So this is maximum mark available. And if we run this, again, it won't work. Why won't it work? Well, the one above works. And again, I'm just showing you here the importance of making sure you name the labels and the text boxes when you want to pull the information through from other areas. So what we'll do, if we go back into the design view, you'll see that if I click on the combo box we created earlier on, I again didn't give it a name, and it's just combo 15. We're going to make sure that it's relevant to our little text box down here, and we're going to put it as CBO subject. What's happening here is obviously it's getting the information from our combo box that we created, and it's getting the maximum available mark. Now earlier on we created a query and to show the information inside of this combo box, and we selected 3 areas, and one of them was max mark. So when we created the combo dot column close bracket number 1, we're getting the value from the column 1 inside of that query, which happened to be the maximum mark available. So we're now going to move on and we're going to create the next option for us, and we're going to create another text box here. And we're just going to play around with the handles just to make sure it fits a little bit better. And we're going to give this a label as well. And this is going to be the number of students. As you can see here, it overlaps slightly onto the text box area. We can select the handles, and if you click on the larger of the handles, as I'm doing here, you can drag the objects independently around rather than as a group. So I can move my text box, or the input text box area, around a bit so that it fits into my page a bit better. We're now going to move on to the next of our text boxes we have to include on our form. And this one's going to be looking at the highest mark. And I'm going to leave it unbound for now. And now I'm going to create another text box area for the lowest mark. I'm going to come back to those in a minute just to change around the information inside the unbound area. And now I'm going to add another text box area, and this one will be for the highest percentage. And I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger as well. And I'm going to go inside here and I'm going to equals square bracket, and I'm going to get the value from the highest mark, and I'm going to close the square bracket. I'm going to divide that by, and I'm opening up the square bracket again, and this time I'm going to get the max mark value. So as you can see, once I click on enter, that's going to say the expression I've entered has too many parameters and there's something missing, it's an error. So what this means, again, as we did before, is that one of the areas or one of the things we're calling on hasn't been named properly. And as you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm just copying and pasting this label and text box, and I'm just going to change it from highest to lowest. And I'm going to change the label here to be lowest as well. This is an easier way to do it, just quicker to do something on the fly like that. Now, as I said, we need to make sure that all of our text boxes are labeled properly, and as you can see, the text box 21 doesn't have a proper label, and that will make our highest mark and lowest mark percentage label and text box not work properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change this to highest mark, and then I'm going to click on the lowest mark text box area, and I'm going to change that name to be lowest mark as well. Now that we've done that, and we've got the values in there, we're just going to run it and look at what it looks like, and we can see that the number of students element, we can put some data in there. Max mark, if we click on 22, lowest mark 33, and we can see that actually no, this isn't working quite right. We've got these names area. So I'm just going to go back into design view here, and we're going to have a little look at what we've put in inside of our parameters, and we can see we've got the highest mark. We know we've got the text boxes that have that, and we've got the lowest mark, which we've got the text boxes. However, we've not got the max mark label named properly. So if we go up here, you can see it's text box 17. We're going to change that to max mark. Once we change that to max mark, we should, when we run it, notice that the actual labels and the text boxes we've got for highest and lowest percentages work properly. So there we go. We can see that, yep, it's got the number 44 as a max mark, and we can see the lowest mark was 22, and sorry, the lowest mark was 2, and the highest mark was 22, and we can see that the percentages have been worked out appropriately. Now the problem is these text box areas are not formatted in a percentage. They've got a lowest decimal number. So we need to click on it, and we need to go over to the property sheet and change what sort of format that this is going to be in. Here you can see I'm just going to scroll down to the % option and select that as percentage, and I'm going to do the same for the lowest option as well and change that to percentage too. Now what should happen when we run it is we should have a nice round average there to 2 decimal places, and it works as we would expect. I'm going to click on to the design view, and what I'm going to do is just going to select these text box areas, drag them over a bit. And what you can do is you can select all of them as I'm doing here, and then you can just align them to the left, and it just snaps them over so they're a bit more identified and uniform. And we're just going to make sure that all of our labels are appropriately labeled. So we're going to have subject there, I'm going to put colon so that it's clear to the user on what these field areas are.